Time for love again. Time for love again.
Thanks for checking out today's video. My name is Christian, and today we're going to be looking at a bunch of cool new things in Spikemark. So we're going to kind of pick up a little bit from where we started last time, and that'll be talking about presets. So a quick refresher here in Spikemark. So we have a couple different workspaces. Currently I am in the Queues workspace, and we can see that because up here in the top we see our workspaces, and then we have our three different ones. So first up, we're going to be looking at presets. So presets are really just cues in a different way. So presets allow us to have these preset looks that are easy to recall, and they give us it's a quicker, more straightforward way of viewing things, especially when we're talking about facility automation stuff, or if we're talking about like maintenance moves and stuff like that. So to create a preset, first thing we're going to do is we have our queue. I'm going to work with Q2, and I'm going to look at, I want to turn my deck track stuff here, which is my curtain call, my push stick mini, and my push stick V2 into a preset. So to do that, I'm going to right click on the playback, so playback 1, and I'm going to click the create preset option. Here I can give it a name, so I'll call this move deck stuff, and if I have any notes I want to add to it, I can also add notes here, and then I can go ahead and I can save those changes. Now when I jump over to the presets workspace, we can see I have something. So the first thing we'll notice is we have another model view here, and you'll notice not everything is in this one. Only the things that are going to move show up in this preset view. We can still right-click, pan around, just like our regular model view. This gives us a quick way to see only the things that are going to move. The other thing you'll notice is these are orange, telling us that it is a frozen view, and that these are the final positions for these motors. So we can see in our live view up here that our curtain call, our push stick mini, and our push stick are all sitting on the other side of the stage, versus in the preset view here, we can see these are going to be their final locations. This gives us a good indication of, oh, I want the stage to look like this. This is the one I can click. So we can see we have our name that we gave it, and then we can also see we have some descriptions. So curtain call tracks on stage 2480. This gives us a way of both visually seeing it with the model, and then also being able to read out all of the steps that it's going to do. So to load this, I can go ahead and I can click anywhere on it, and we can see that that pushes it into our playback 1. We can see on the screen where it says run preset, move deck stuff. We can see our go button lights up. If we're using a console, we can see that the playback 1 go button is illuminated, and we can see that our playback dial also indicates that there is something loaded on it. We can see Q2. When I then can either use the physical button or the on-screen button to then fire this cue. So we can see we can go, and all of our playback 1 things start to go. Once it's complete, we can see they turn blue. We can see our border is still green because we have it moving. It's complete. Our border turns blue. Everything turns blue in the model. And then on the console, the light has turned off. So that's pretty great for those simple one-step things. But we can also take this a step farther, and we can do multi-step presets. So let's go ahead and create one of those, and we'll start by creating a new queue. So I've right-clicked Add Queue, and then I'm going to, let's go ahead and let's move our spot line. So I'm going to click it over here in our access list. I'm going to drag it, and I'm going to drop it onto, we'll use playback 2 for this one. Let's run this to 240 at 36, 36, 36. I'll save those changes. Let's also grab our spotline V2, same thing, grab it, drag it and drop it. And we'll also run this to 240 at 36, 36, 36. Then once those get there, I'm going to add a completion trigger. So I'm going to come over to our triggers toolbox. I'm going to grab the metal, which is our completion. I'm going to drag that, drop it onto there. You can see there's nothing to edit for a completion trigger. And then I'm going to grab my push stick mini, and let's have this run to 60, and we'll run this at 24, 12, and 12. Save those changes. Let's also add our push stick V2 by dragging it and dropping it. Same thing, 12 and 12. Save those changes. And then let's go ahead and also add another completion trigger to that by dragging from our trigger toolbox. And then we can go ahead and now let's say we're going to move our push stick mini back to where it started. So back to 120 at 24, 12, and 12. Save those changes. And same thing with our push stick V2. Grab, drag, drop. Back to 120, 24, 12, 12. And we'll go ahead and save those changes. Now that I have this cue built, we can go ahead and turn this into a preset just like we did before. We're going to right click on the playback, create preset. We'll call this and I'll call it that. Go ahead, we'll save our changes. Now, when we jump over to our presets workspace, we can see I've got that second one. We can see that this is showing us those final locations. So even though we move our push stick and our push stick mini to 240, but then we're going to bring it back to the 120, which is showing us this here. So it always just shows us the final location of where they're going to be. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to load it by clicking it. We can see that's brought it up onto playback 2 because that's where I created it. Move wagons after acros. We can see that's the one we've loaded. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the on-screen controls this time, and I'm going to go ahead and press the go button. And then we can see in our model, we have our spot lines moving. Once they hit their position, they've completed, we're going to go ahead, I'm going to move the push sticks. Once those complete, then we're going to go ahead and move those push sticks again. And we can see that written out, so step 1, step 2, step 3. And then we also see those final locations again. This is super handy for things that always need to move in a specific way that we just want to be able to recall at any time, but also that need to happen in a very specific order. So let's say we have to open the curtain, then we can move the wagon, or lift the curtains out of the way, then we can move the wagon, or any other thing we could imagine. And there's no limit to the number of presets, and there's no limit to the number of steps. So we can build it out as detailed as we want. The other interesting thing about this too is at the moment you can only do this in Spikemark, but coming later this year you'll also be able to run the presets from the pendant. So that'll further enhance this functionality. So besides presets, we're also going to talk about some of the other different kinds of stagehands today. So what does that mean? So we're all familiar with the actual motors, right? Those are our motor stagehands that we add through the machine library. But if we right click in the Axis dashboard over here, back into the Cues workspace, and if I right click on that, we can see I have a couple other different kinds of stagehands I can add. So I'm going to start with the stagehand FX. So I've right clicked and I can click add stagehand FX. And then this allows me, so I've now just selected it. So our properties have opened over here on the side. This allows us to use the stagehand FX. So we can get, which gives us 4 inputs and 4 outputs. So we can have things on stage trigger different cues using the input actions, or we can have the different inputs be used to trigger things if we use the FX input trigger. So if I don't have one set up today, so I can't show it off because we're just in simulator, but if I'll just quick add a new cue, just drag curtain call onto it, doesn't matter. In our trigger toolbox, grab the FX input one, so I can then pick our FX, pick the input, save those changes, and again, I'll just add push to mini after that. So then this allows us, using the stagehand effects, once I run this cue, the curtain call can go, and then as soon as the input 1 on the FX is triggered, so whether this is something practical on the stage or it's some button that someone else is pressing, once something has happened, and then we can trigger the next step in the sequence. A lot of times this can also be used for things like air brakes on turntables, or things of that nature. Besides just FXs, we also have the ability to do a Modbus effect. So this is pretty limited at this point, but I'm going to grab it, drag it, drop it. When I click on it, so we can see using Modbus TCP, we can activate or clear coils. At the moment, that's the only functionality for the Modbus, but this can be really handy if you need, if you already have Modbus TCP stuff and you have some coils and you need more, you need to activate more outputs than what the FX allows for. We also have a generic UDP messenger. So this allows us, and again, I'm just dragging this onto Q4, onto playback. So this allows us to send any message we would like. So if you have some other system that supports incoming UDP messages, then we can just trigger those things. This is pretty handy for custom things that don't necessarily support OSC, but supports UDP. Or similarly, if you're writing your own custom little Python script or something, you can send just generic UDP. And this can be any message you want. Go save those changes, and then when we fire that, it'll send this UDP message. And so when I have it selected, we can see it's going to send it to this address and this port over in the properties. And then lastly, we have the OSC messenger. This one is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create a new queue, Q5, and I'm going to drag the OSC messenger onto, we'll go playback 1. So similar to the UDP messenger, this allows us to send OSC commands to other devices. So anything, and again, so we can see up here in our settings, we're going to send it to this address on this port, and then this will allow us to send messages to anything that can receive them. So the other cool thing, so we can send any arbitrary message we like, or if we click the little plus, we also have a library set up. So first up, the one that automatically opens when you click the little plus is the Spikemark one. But also, if we go, when you install Spikemark, if we click I click the little browse, because there are a couple other ones that come with Spikemark. So if I click browse, documents, Spikemark, OSC libraries, when you install Spikemark, these are the ones that are automatically come with it. So if I go ahead and I'm going to open up the QLab one, this is just a couple of the very many different OSC messages that QLab supports. These are just a few. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with, let's go ahead and start Q1. So if I just select it, we can see any of the parameters that we need to fill in will show up down here at the bottom. So like if I click the load Q at, we can see I need to put in a Q number and a second. But for the start Q1, I just need to put in the Q number. So if I click insert, we can see Q1 start, and if we save those changes. So I do have QLab set up over here. So let's go ahead and configure this. So I'm going to click the OSC messenger, and the first thing I need to do is I need to put in the target IP address. So if I jump over to QLab, and then if I jump over to the settings here, we can see that my IP address of the QLab computer is 10.0.1.222. So if I jump back into Spikemark and I type that in for the address, that's our first step, 10.0.1.122. And then the port And this is then configured in QLab itself. So if I switch to that screen, and then if I come over to our settings, come over to network, we can see OSC access. So we can see it's set up with no passcode. That's very important. We don't want, Spikemark doesn't support a passcode, so we need to give permission to the no passcode. We can see that QLab is going to be listening on port 53,000, which is what we have set in Spikemark. So with that all good, we can click done here, and then we can go ahead, switch back to Spikemark. We can see we have that set. And then I will also go ahead and I will do Spikemark QLab. So we can see we've got both running here. When I load and run, we can see we triggered our QLab queue number 1, which was to trigger this, this lovely image here. So besides just sending externally, which is super handy, we can also stream position data. So this is helpful if we want to sync up what motion is happening on screen with some other element in our projection software, right? So to do this, we support a couple of different options. So up here in show control, we can see we support watch out, we support generic UDP. So this allows us to, so if our system doesn't support watch out or doesn't support OSC or doesn't support PSN, this allows me to do a custom one. We can see what the output pattern is, so it'll send the name, the position, and the speed, and then this is configurable. So if we jump over to the docs site here, we can see there's all these other options for things we can send in that string. But this allows us to send any message in any format. Similarly, we also support POSI StageNet, PSN, and then lastly we support OSC position output. And so these are all very similar. They all behave in a very similar way, but we're going to dive into the OSC one. So we can see again, we need our server address. So this is the device we are trying to control. So in our case, we're going to do QLab again. So we know that this IP address should be 10.0.1.222. We can see the port again. We want it to be that 53,000. And now this is where we get to make our decision about what position data do we want to send. So we can see a list of all of our motors. We can see then the address. So this is the message we're going to send, and then if we need to add a scaling factor. So for our case here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the Spotline acro, and to activate it, I'm just going to go ahead, press the little check mark. So we're going to be sending the Spotline acro position data to the address Q, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to change this to 1. Translation X live. This is specifically for QLab, but again, you can put in any address you need here. And just to make it a little bit more obvious, I'm going to change the scaling factor to 2. So then we need to go ahead and we need to enable it. So we click send output. Then when we change so we can see down here now, we're sending messages. We can see it because it's flickering here. We can go ahead and we can close this window. I'm going to jump over to the jog workspace because I'm just going to jog it for a second. So if I grab our Spotline acro, now when I jog this, we're going to be able to see, and I will switch to our split screen. So we're going to be able to see. Now when I jog this, we'll go ahead, we'll jog it up. We can see our image moves. Now it's very laggy there. do. I don't think OBS like that, but we can see the image moves that way. We can go ahead and go down, and we can see that it moves that way. We can see it move. The OBS is not cooperating very well on that one. But that'll allow us to move back and forth. And I just had it, and again, it is all based off of this address, so OC position address. So if I wanted to go up and down to be more in line with what that machine is doing, I would change it to Y live instead of X live. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and, oops, not that one, show control, and we're just going to go ahead, and when I click send output again, that has now toggled it off. I don't need to be sending it anymore. So besides just doing OSC to an external device, we can also take OSC input commands in Spikemark. So this allows us to do a couple of different things. So first up, let's show off, let's go ahead and we'll change this OSC messenger name because this is our QLab one. Let's go ahead and change this to QLab so we keep things straight for ourselves. And then let's go ahead and add, well, before we do that, let's talk about what are OSC input triggers. So OSC input triggers are a way to be able to control Spikemark from another device. There's several different things that Spikemark can do, and if I jump over to the docs site real quick, so we can see we have a bunch of different messages. So we can soft stop Spikemark, we can run queues, we can adjust playback speed, we can run and stop playbacks, we can adjust, we can change the queuing from another device. So we can change the sequence speed, we can change accelerations, decelerations for the sequence. We can do the same thing for movements. We can change what a movement position is. We can change the spike. We can update the spike factor, the spike offset, the spike value. We can change the movement speed. For motors, we can stop a motor. We can reset the drive. Again, we can change those spike positions. All of these addresses are documented on the docs website, but then also in Spikemark. So now I'll go ahead, I will add a new OSC messenger. We're going to call this one, I'm going to call this one loop back, and I'm going to listen on port 5302, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have Spikemark trigger itself first. I'm going to show that off. And so that means I'm going to change this to Spikemark's IP address, which I believe is that. We can double check here in settings. I can see Spikemark's, oh, it's 104. Okay, we'll change that to 104. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a couple of queues now. So first up, I'm going to make a new queue, right click add queue. I'm going to grab the spotline acro. I'm going to send this to 120. We're going to go at 48, 24, 24. Save those changes. I'm going to add a delay trigger. And then I'm going to set this to be, oops, that was a completion trigger. I'm going to delete that trigger, and I'm going to grab the delay trigger. I'm going to set this to, we'll say 10 seconds. Save those changes. I'm going to grab our loopback messenger, add that here. And then I'm going to create a second queue by right-clicking add in queue. I'm going to grab the floor pocket. I'm going to put this onto playback 2. I'm going to have this run to, we'll go 120. We'll have this go 18, 9. save those changes. And then we're going to go ahead and add another, go ahead this time add a completion trigger back to here. And then we're going to add the spotline acro to it. And then we're going to have this run to 0, 48, 24, 24. Save those changes. We'll add time trigger. And again, this is just an arbitrary cue sequence that I'm writing here. This will work for anything. This just happens to be the one that I'm doing off the top of my head right now for the first time. Save those changes, and I'm going to then go ahead and I'm going to add our loop back to that as well. So you notice I haven't clicked on those yet. I don't have anything set yet. So what I'm going to do is, so up here in Q6, I'm going to click on step 2. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click the little plus. I am going to check that I've got our Spikemark one loaded. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick, that hasn't been updated, so we're not going to do that. We'll just type it in. We're going to go ahead and go Q. We want to run Q7. I want to run playback 2, and we're going to want to trigger that. So what this is saying is Q7, playback 2, and go. So when this fires, it will run playback 2 in Q7. Similarly, I'm going to click loop back in Q7, and I want this one to run Q6. Q6, playback. This time it's playback 1 because that's where I've written it, and go and save those changes. This is pretty handy, so we can do endless sequences of things. This is a nice little workaround to be able to do that, because as you know, you can't use triggers in between cues. You can only use the triggers inside of a cue. So using the OSC input trigger and just having Spikemark trigger itself is a pretty cool way to get around this. So then we've written these cues, but now we need to enable this functionality in Spikemark. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and up into show control, and then we see we have our OSC input trigger. So here's where we're going to set that port. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to use port 53002 because this is what we set for our loop back messenger. I'm going to turn off send status messages. Spikemark is able to send messages that it has received the message, basically just a confirmation, and we don't need that, so I'm just going to turn that off. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click enable, and we can see it's enabled now with the little check mark there. And close that window. If I click show control, we can also see there's the little dot now next to the menu item. Again, this is telling us that it is enabled. So now what I can do, I'm going to go ahead, I click load on Q6. When I click go, what should happen is our Acro 1 should start running after 10 seconds. Then we're going to trigger Q7 playback 2. And then once we get through the end of that, that'll then jump us back up to Q6. And if we programmed it right, that should be what happens. So let's go ahead and find out. So again, Q6 is loaded. We can see it's in the playback window here. Q6, it's loaded, it's red. I'm going to go ahead and press go. We can see that it starts. I probably didn't really need a 10-second delay, but we did it anyway. Here we go. We can see that triggered. We see playback 2 in Q7 automatically triggered. We can see as it's working its way through. And then once it's done, it's delay. And now we're running Q6 again. And then once this again completes, it'll go ahead, run 7. Because the floor pocket was already at its position, we're just running step 2 again. And now we can see this will run back and forth pretty much indefinitely until we manually stop it. And so once it go ahead, and now I've just pressed the soft stop button on the console, so I can go ahead and stop it. Again, this is one of those pretty cool features for being able to trigger Spikemark to link between cues. We do this a lot in our shop here when we're doing cycle testing or load testing of things. And so that's pretty cool. Then you get Spikemark to do it. But also you can use another software, and this is probably where you'll use it more often than not, is you can use other software to trigger Spikemark. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new queue, Q8. I'm going to add the push stick mini to it. Go ahead, we'll add it onto playback 1. Let's go ahead and run this to 300. We'll go 36, 36, 36. Save those changes. Let's go ahead and also add the curtain call, everybody's favorite machine. Let's also have this run to 300 at 36, 36, 36. Save those changes. And for good measures, let's add a completion trigger. And let's add the push stick V2 to it as well. And we'll also send this to 300. And we can go ahead and save those changes. So now, if I jump over into, got my right mouse, and I'm going to jump over to QLab, and I'm going to get that set up so we can so we can trigger Q8 from QLab. All right, so over here, I actually have, I'm going to close this one. I've got one set up. I'm going to open this workspace here. All right, and so I'm going to jump into settings, and then we're going to come over to network, and so we can see I've got my Spikemark patch set up. So Spikemark sending to Spikemark's IP address, which again is that 10.0.1.104. I have the port that we're listening on, so that 53002, and no passcode set. Go ahead, click done there, and I'm going to grab the network queue. We'll go ahead, drop that in. We can see we've got our X. We don't have it set up, so if we come over to our settings for it, we have our Spikemark 1 set, and here, similar to like we did in Spikemark, we're going to go and type in our address. We're going to go Q, we're going to go 8, we're going to go playback 1, and we're going to do go. And there we go. We can see we've got that written just like we had it written in Spikemark, but now this time we're going to be coming from QLab. So if I go ahead, I will do our split screen. We'll see if this behaves any better. All right, there we go. And now when if we've programmed it right, if I go ahead, I've got Q2 and QLab selected. I press go, and there we can see in Spikemark, we have now triggered our Q8 playback 1. So because I'm running in simulator for here, I have the hold to run turned off in Spikemark. But if you're going to do this in practice, or with live motors in real world setting, we always recommend that you have hold to run on, so there's somebody sitting at the console monitoring to make sure it's safe. So long as it's safe, they can have the hold to run press, and then the input trigger can be taken from another system. Go ahead and I'll switch back to just Spikemark. There we go. All right, so again, this was all just set up through our show control and our OC input trigger. And it's that listen port, that 5302. And so the cool thing is then, because we're using the different ports, we can kind of combine all of these things together. So if we go ahead and let's start a new queue. We'll go Q9. Let's add our curtain call, because it's everybody's favorite machine. Gonna run this to 120. we'll go 150. Oops. We'll go 150. We'll go 36, 36, 36. Save those changes. We're going to then add a push stick mini to that. And we'll get this going to 150, 36, 36, 36. Again, these are just cues that I'm coming up with off the top of my head. This works with anything. Let's add a completion trigger. Let's add our QLab messenger. So this one means we're going to trigger something in QLab. So let's go ahead and we'll click our little plus. We're going to open our QLab library, and we're going to go ahead and click start. We'll insert that command. Let's do this as Q5 start. Save that change. So QLab, we're going to send to QLab Q5 start. We're going to add a delay trigger there. We're going to go in 2 seconds. Save those changes. And then let's go ahead. We'll grab our spotline acro. And let's have this go to 300. We'll go, this one go faster. Let's go 48, 48, 48. Save those changes. So then what we're aiming for here then is that we're going to have our current call and our push stick move. Once they're done moving, we're going to trigger QLab's Q5. And then after 2 seconds, and then we're going to start moving the spotline acro. So let's also go ahead, let's turn back on our OSC position output. So again, spotline acro. This time we're going to have it be our Q5. So I'm going to change this address to Q5 translation X live. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and we can send that output. Go ahead and close this. In QLab, I can go ahead and I just have everybody's favorite duck picture. We're going to go ahead, drop this into QLab. I'm going to change it to Q5 because that's what we've programmed in Spikemark. So then we'll see if OBS is going to cooperate with us. We will go ahead and split the screen here. So now we're going to go ahead. I've loaded Q9 using the little load icon. And we can see it's up here. And I'm going to click go. You can see our motors start to move. Once they complete, we can see that, there we go, OBS is cooperating. We triggered our Q, and now it is moving with our spotline acro. Pretty cool. Okay, and now I will jump back to Spikemark. And so we can see this allows a lot of flexibility, and this will allow for a lot of pretty cool programming. Kind of the possibilities are endless here, how you can combine all these things and make some pretty cool stuff happen. And again, I've been showing this off with QLab, but this works with anything that supports OSC. So lighting boards, sound boards, video servers, anything and everything. So this is a bit of a shorter one this time. If there's any questions, I can go ahead and answer that now about this. Anything we've talked about now, or anything else in Spikemark that I didn't talk about but you're still interested in. Yeah, there's a delay, so I'll give it a second. We can close that. We don't need that open. There we go. All right, cool. well, with that, we'll go ahead and that'll be it for today. Thanks everyone for watching.